Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Cooking with Dad. We are making today a soup that our family loves. We're soup eaters. We think that you could eat soup any time of year. Any time is a good time to eat soup. This is it's a light soup. It's a vegetable soup. We call it tortellini soup, mainly because it has tortellini in it. But it's kind of like a minestrone, very similar to a minestrone. But with tortellini, like little mini tortellini in it, and it's very tasty. We use cheese tortellini. We started doing that because Morgan is a vegetarian, but we like it either way. You could add meat, you could add chicken, you can add sausage, you could add a variety of things. It's one of those things you can kind of make it your own, but I'm going to show you the basic way on how we make tortellini soup. It's one of our family's favorites, and I think you'll like it too. Here we go. Okay, so here we go. So your basic soup is you're going to use broth or stock. Use chicken stock. Now this is the stock I typically buy, but you can also make it. I've used this a bunch of times. In fact, I usually use both if I can. I like to use some regular chicken stock, not broth. Stock is made with the bones and the fat and has a lot more flavor. Broth is a lot more clear. This has a little bit of cloudiness to it, but actually it's a lot more flavorful. And Kitchen Basics is the brand I typically buy just because I think this is the best. But also use this. I've used this in a bunch of my videos before. It's better than the granules. It's a paste. I don't know if you can see this or not. See, it's a paste. And it's actually made from boiled down chicken stock. So it's just like reduced chicken stock. So it's really, really tasty. It's very, very good. Also use some pesto, basil pesto, garlic, which I've used this all the time, squeezed garlic. You can also use fresh garlic. That's easy to do as well, but this is just so much easier. Usually use a zucchini. This time I'm using a zucchini and a yellow squash, but you could just use one or the other. I almost always try to at least use one zucchini for that. I'm making a large batch. In fact, I'm making a double batch today, so there's a lot of stuff. But you could use this and make this soup. Oh, also use the tortellini. I used to use the fresh tortellini, and then I found this stuff. It's a dried, shelf-stable tortellini, and it's really, really good. And it's a lot smaller, and I like it better in the soup. I just like the texture better because the fresh seems to want to fall apart in the soup. This wants to hold together, maybe because it's a dried pasta. But I'm making a double batch, so I got 2 of those. You could do that and make a beautiful soup with that. However, I also like to add a can of diced tomatoes and then a can of beans. Now this could be kidney beans, white beans, black beans, pinto beans, just a can of beans. Just add, or garbanzo beans. All of those are good, but I like to use the kidney beans. And in this case, I'm also going to use some white beans, do a little both. And then just for giggles, I'm going to use some corn too. If you have some fresh corn, you can use some of that. But this is just easy, something I had in the cabinet. It's easy to use. And then I also like to add mushrooms. I'm using some baby bella mushrooms. With that, these are already sliced, makes it easier. But yeah, that's what we're using to make our soup. And what I'm gonna do is just chop this up. Of course, 1 onion. Chop this up and show you what it looks like. Now, I took the skin off of these onions before I remembered that. Oh yeah, I was gonna make a video of this. I'm actually making this to take to a family's house today. Some family we're gonna visit. But I'm using a red onion today. But it can be a yellow onion or a white onion, just any kind of onion. And I like the vegetables to be a little bit chunky. And if you think about the size of, say, a kidney bean, right? A kidney bean, you kind of want things to be about that size, somewhere in that range. So I'm going to make this a little bit chunky, which case I'm going to cut this way. And instead of dicing it, I'm just going to go down and just cut it this way, turn it. So you end up with some chunks. You see this? And these things will come apart in the soup and become individual pieces. In fact, they'll almost disappear by the time that they cook down. But these onions are going to add a lot of flavor to your soup. In fact, these are called aromatics. When you're cooking and you hear someone talk about aromatics, this is what they're talking about. They're talking about this. Herbs, garlic is also considered an aromatic. Things that really smell good, aroma. So yeah, I mean, simple chop, easy to do. Make sure you have a sharp knife. I've already cleaned these, but these are a little bit special. These are going to match more of the tortellini, which is about this size. So you could slice it, just slice it all the way through. I like to make little half moons, to me that goes it. And also I like them to be a little bit chunky, so you can kind of see the thickness here. That's probably 1/4 of an inch thick, something like that. So a little bit of thickness there, because these tend to kind of want to get translucent and clear as well. We'll add these and the mushrooms in late in the cooking. The mushrooms and the tortellini fairly late in the cooking. But right now I'm just going to get everything kind of chopped up, cut the ends off. Now, on the squash, this is a pretty straight squash. On the squash, sometimes these things want to curve. What you'll want to do is, you kind of see how this sort of curves a little bit this way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the curve side down, right? Slide my knife through, be very careful, and cut through that curve. So now you've got 2 book-matched curves. Now what you can do is lay them opposite to one another, like that. And now you see they kind of hug one another, so you're not sort of fighting that curve. You can cut them both at the same time that way. Just a little chopping tip. I urge you to have fun chopping, because a lot of cooking involves prep and chopping, and that's the part that a lot of people hate. So pretty much those are my vegetables. Easy, right? So you should have in your cooking repertoire, you should have what this is called a stock pot. See how deep it is? It's good for cooking. Good for cooking pasta. You can take a colander like this and slide it in there and use that for cooking your pasta. This is called a stock pot, and I use it for a lot of stuff, mostly pasta. But when I'm making a lot of soup, this is also great for making soup. You should have one of these in your repertoire. Looking at US. Have a stock pot, and I'm going to go ahead and start the onions. I already put a little bit of this general oil in there, just some canola oil. Doesn't have to be flavored at all, but know that these kind of thin pots here get hot super fast, versus a thicker pan that takes more of the metal to get hot. So I'm going to get the onions started, and then I also forgot to show you that I got to cook carrots. I forgot to cut the carrots. So while this is getting started, I'm going to cut the carrots. Back to the carrots. I forgot to show carrots. You'll do it too, I promise you. I'm going to cut these ends off. I'm going to scrape. Let's do it right here. I think I've showed you this peeler before. This is a really good peeler. Those little bitty cheap, just full metal ones, I hate. I never used them, or tried, but I hated them. But this I use all the time because it's so freaking awesome. Now typically, I've said it before, you don't really even have to peel the carrots, because it's not really a skin. It is, it's just where it dries up on the edges. That's it. Just make sure it's washed good and you can use it. But I peel it anyway. One reason I want to cut this in half lengthwise. Just be real careful. Don't cut your fingers. Go slow. Make sure you have a sharp knife. Do that. And just like the squash, have them opposite one another. And then you can cut them. You know what? I'm going to actually make these a little smaller, just because carrots can get a little bit much to eat in a soup. So make them a little smaller. And also, doing the half moon shape means that they don't want to roll off the board when you cut them, which is also super nice. So I got the onions in here cooking. I'll turn them off just because I need to wait for the carrots. And now add the carrots. You know what? This is another reason I like a cutting board, is it gives you an opportunity to bring your veggies to your pot without spilling a bunch. I mean, you still do sometimes. Notice I'm not cooking the zucchini and squash just yet, because I don't want them to get nasty, but I did want them chopped. So I'll get the rest of this stuff started in just a second. Now, I'm going to cook these vegetables. I don't know if you can see in there or not. A little bit. I want to cook these vegetables until I don't want these onions to become like fully translucent, but just like a little translucent. I put a little bit of the vegetable oil just so it doesn't stick to the bottom, and you know, gives them a little room to breathe and move around. But the broth itself will also cook these onions and carrots, but I want to give them a head start because they take a little bit longer. And man, it smells really good. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and add our chicken stock to this. One thing you're going to notice when you buy these boxes of chicken stock, I'll show you on the next one here, that when you take this top off, like it comes like this top on, the way this top is made, I don't know if you can see this. I messed this up when they first added this. I didn't pay attention. But see how it has these little bitty teeth on the inside of it? Maybe you can see that? Okay. These little teeth on the inside of it. That when you take it off, it literally, I don't know if you can see that either, it cuts the little piece of foil, I guess, that they use to kind of keep it all sealed in. So the first time I took it off, I'm like, what? This thing's already been opened. Ooh, I can't use that, and threw it away. And then it occurred to me the next one, I'm like, oh crap, yeah, that's just the way they made it. How convenient. So don't be alarmed when this thing already looks open. Here's a little tip: if you have the spout from the top, it won't gurgle as much because the air gets in and pulls it out. Physics. All right, so I'm using 2 of these right now, but I'm going to add more later. And one thing you need to be mindful of is that if you've seen me cook before, you'll know that I typically like to add salt. Like whenever I add a vegetable to a dish, add a little bit of salt for that vegetable to make sure that that's seasoned. That way I'm not having to over or under season the whole dish. I did not do that in this case for a couple of reasons. One, everything else I'm going to be adding to it is going to add some salt to it. So the stock itself has quite a bit of salt. The stuff I'm going to make with the bouillon is going to have quite a bit of salt to it as well. The pesto also quite a bit of salt. And I just don't want to oversalt the dish at that point. So what I'll do is I'm going to depend on these things being salty enough, the pesto, the bouillon, the stock, and depend on those things being salty enough. And then if I need more salt at the end, I can always do it. Sometimes I add some Parmesan cheese, which is also a salty cheese, but I may not do that this time. We'll see. You can do it. I mean, that's one thing about this soup. You can make it as crazy as you want. You can keep adding stuff. Just make sure it's a fairly brothy soup. It's one thing you want. You just want to have plenty of broth, because that's really the good part. Okay. Okay. You'll see me use this cup. I'm not sure what to call it. Measuring cup. It's a big one. It's an 8-cup measuring vessel. I use this a lot when I'm making the broth. You'll see me use this. You don't have to. You can just make it in a pot. You can do it in all kinds. You make it in a big bowl, whatever. You make it in batches. I like it. I like this one. It's glass. It's sturdy. I can put a lot of hot water in it. And versus I have a plastic one, but it's a little too flimsy, and it's, you know, you're more apt to slosh it and spill stuff. This one's sturdy. It's got a handle. It's also got a spout, so it pours easily. It's already gradated. I don't know if you can see it. Is gradated a word? It's already measured on the sides here, so you know how much you're getting. And I just like it. If it's something you want to get, I recommend it. In this case, I'm going to use a teaspoon for every 2 cups of this. So it's a heaping teaspoon, I know. 1, it's not really a teaspoon. 2, 3, 4, because I've got 4 cups in here. I mean 8 cups in here. So 1 of these per 2 cups. So I've got that, and then a whisk. If you don't have a whisk, get a whisk. Just get a whisk. Because it makes it great for stirring things. You can see I'm making some beautiful broth here. It's like I'm cheating, and I am cheating. This is a cheat for sure. I could cook a couple of chickens all day and make a beautiful stock, and it still probably would not be as good as this stock. Super chickeny. It's not terribly salty like the. It doesn't have that sort of fake taste that the granulated bouillon has, or like the bouillon that comes in the little, the little squares that you got to peel the stuff off. That's what I grew up with, and it was okay. It was still a cheat too, but this is so much better. It's actually made from chicken, and it's very good. All right, so I'm going to pour this carefully. It's probably still going to spill a little bit, so I'm going to pour that in there too, and get it getting good and hot. I'm going to turn this up to high. Now that I've got all that in there, and I'm going to go ahead and add you know what, I might add a little bit more of this. I'm going to go ahead and add this whole thing of, well, because I'm making a double batch, I'm going to add a whole thing of basil pesto. I'm not sure why my brain's not working. Basil pesto. I'm going to add this basil pesto in there. And this, with the chicken, this is enough to make chicken stock right there. I mean, you can stop right here and have a meal. Honestly, it's so good. Just that alone is so delicious. But stir it up really good. Get all that blending. I may go ahead and add, I'm not going to add my fresh vegetables, but I am going to add my canned vegetables to this as well. So I've got a can of diced tomatoes, just basic diced tomatoes, the cheap kind. I'm not the really expensive kind. These are like 5 for $1 or something like that. 5 for $3, I forget. Can of red kidney beans. Now you'll notice that I'm not draining these. It doesn't matter. The juice is fine. We're making soup, so having the juice in there just gives it a little bit more of that bean flavor to it, and that's fine. Same thing with the white beans. It's kind of nice to have a variety of colored beans when in a soup, when you're making soup. And add the corn. So there's a lot of little things that sit in your spoon when you get a spoonful. And then I'm going to add probably 6 of these. Now, the pesto that I put in there already has quite a bit of garlic, but I want a little bit more. This is sort of an Italian soup, so I'm going to add 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of those in there as well. And a stir. And literally all you're doing is really getting it hot. I mean, none of this has to cook a lot. We're going to cook, like, once I get this hot, I'm going to cook the zucchini. I'm going to cook the tortellini, and then I'm going to add the zucchini and the mushrooms to it because they don't really need to cook very long. But that's it. I'm just going to bring this to a boil, and we're going to have soup. Literally, it's one of those, you just throw it all in the pot and get it hot. It's just, there's not a lot of technique to it, honestly. So I'll come back when I add the rest of the ingredients. Okay, so I forgot that I was making a double batch, which means I needed another thing of stock. That's also why I got this extra large pot. Now that is what I'm talking about. That's a lot of soup because, one, we all like to eat it, but I'm also going to leave some with them and then also bring home some. So we have some leftovers. This stuff is always going to be better like the next day. But I just wanted you to see, I actually doubled this. Let's did this one more time. Okay, while this is heating up, I wanted to make a plea. I made this for my daughters, and I understand that some of their friends have been watching them. I hope I can teach you to cook too. These are some of the recipes that we love, and I'm sure if you made them, you'd love them as well. But here's what I want. I want you to at least comment. Just a little comment. Looks yummy. Looks yucky. I don't like this in there. Could you make it without that? Any questions? Any of that kind of stuff. Just let me know you're watching. Just anything. Try to subscribe if you can. Of course you can. What am I saying? You can subscribe. Subscribe. How stupid is that? Subscribe. And then also, if you make the recipe, take a picture, take a video, send me something, let me know. I love to see it. I love to know what you thought of it. If there was a step that I could have been clearer on, let me know. Again, this is meant to help, hopefully help teach our kids and you, if you want, how to make the recipes that we love. So if there's something that I can do better, something to be clearer on, maybe I don't belabor something so much, let me know that too. Maybe I talk too much, I don't know. Whatever, just let me know that you're watching. Love to hear from you. Thanks. Okay, it looks like our pot is boiling, which is great. So I am going to add my veggies. Now, keep in mind, I made a double batch. This is a big pot, and it's a big batch, and I normally don't get it this close to the top. Let me change the angle here so I can see better. I normally don't get it quite this close to the top, and I'm going to be very careful putting this stuff in. Don't do this. Don't do as I say, not as I do. It's just I didn't plan well enough to make a double batch. I was just thinking about making soup, and I normally just use that big pot. Now let's see if this will accept the noodles. Literally, you just pour it in there. There we go. And this stuff's it does fit, but just barely. This is so much soup. I've never made this much soup before. This is crazy. Now what's going to happen is this boiling water is going to cook those noodles. They're going to expand. They're going to suck up that juice. They'll suck up that broth. That broth is actually going to flavor the noodles. I say noodles. The tortellini, which is made out of pasta, when it expands and starts to suck up that moisture, the broth, it's that flavored broth. So the tortellini are going to be even that much more delicious. But that, honestly, that's it. I'm going to put the lid back on this and see if I can get it to a boil. As soon as it boils, I'm going to put the lid back on it and cut it off and just let it sit for like 10 to 15 minutes. And I'll show you what it looks like when it gets done. But that's it. You just make get a big pot and throw a bunch of stuff in it, and boom, you got soup. I think that's how you make soup, but honestly, it's kind of how you make anything, right? All right, I'll show you what it looks like when we're done.